Ready?
Yep.
Good, and then we can go home. We're already home. All right, we're now concerning ourselves with muscle of the trunk. First, we'll look at the one that head and the neck most superficially. In the back is a muscle that anchors that back to the head along the spine. From that broad origin, it reaches towards the tip of the shoulder. Which of these attachments can you explain? A couple of ways he just moves the head. Oh, look at that. It's getting complicated. Anybody?
Tilts to the same side and rotates to the opposite side.
Okay, very good. Those two. And then it's
I think it extends the head.
It does extend the head. Yeah? Hello. No. So extension means bringing the head back. Flexion means bringing the chin down, right? So when we look at the trap, and you look at where it's attached from here, the midline of the spine and the occiput. This is actually an EOP. And then it goes to the tip of the shoulder, and it does all the motions described. Extend the head, tilt the same side, rotate the opposite side. So tilt the same side is when these contract here, the head goes down to the shoulder on this side. You can see that? When these muscles contract, the head goes down. And then rotate the opposite side. That's a little bit harder. But when these contract here, it does pull the head over a little bit. It does help pull the spine over. So, and then the other thing it does, if you think the muscle attachment, the origin kind of very stable, the stable part is here, it can move the shoulder around. It brings the shoulder up in multiple different directions. We'll talk about that when we talk about the okay? But it doesn't flex the head at all because the muscle is attached in the back of the head and not in the front of the head. If the muscle were attached in the front of the head, like if it were in the front here, then it would flex the head. But since it's attached in the back of the head, it will extend the head. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Good. I know. Yeah. These are, you got to tell me if I'm a little speaking too fast on these because I've been doing the muscle thing for so long that I might not always connect with you guys when I say it the first time. All right, another muscle that moves the head around quite a bit is in the front on the neck. It anchors close to the midline of the sternum and the clavicle. From there, it attaches up to behind the ear. Look at those attachments and visualize them approximating each other, that bringing them closer together. When I do that, I better understand the action of a muscle. So what I do to understand a muscle is sometimes I hold both of my attachments, like under the skull and then under the sternum, for example, for this muscle, or by the sternum, and I bring those attachments closer, and that helps me understand what the muscle does. That better helps me understand. When I do that, I better understand the action of the muscle. It helps me clinically when I try to figure out which one might have got hurt in an injury. Yeah, that's just for my practice stuff. So you know, when you figure out somebody hurt themselves, sometimes you figure out, well, what motion did you do that you hurt yourself in, and then you figure out which muscle might have been stretched too much, and that probably got hurt. What's the name of the muscles what was the name of this muscle?
The trapezius?
The sternocleidomastoid. So let's see here. It's attached from the sternum and the clavicle to behind the ear. So we have it attached, so that's sternum here in the front and clavicle, and then behind the ear is here. So it's one muscle that goes this direction like that. So that's this one right here. See that right here? That one. So when you look at somebody, you can often see it sticking out in the front. You see that? So when somebody turns the head over, it contracts because it's attached behind the ear and in the midline of the body in the front. So he can nicely turn that head over like that when it contracts. It can also, when it contracts on both sides, It can also bring the head forward and bring it to the same side. You know, bring it downward as well a little bit. So that's the SCM. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Why that would be trapezius? I know. We just have to play with these names a little bit, and you guys, you know, for one thing is the name of the muscle, and that's complicated sometimes. The sternocleidomastoid is kind of interesting because it's attached to the sternum. At the cleido means clavicle, and then at the mastoid process. So that's why I make you study that mastoid process in the skull. So sometimes the muscle name is explained by attachment side. Sometimes it's explained by what function, what motion it does. And so, but besides the name, what I think is ultimately more important is that you understand the muscle, where the muscles are attached, and what do they do? What does that mean for my body when it moves around? Because until the muscle hurts, you don't really care about the muscle unless it grows and it looks nice and feels good because you're strong. But when you injure it, then you go like, what might be the one that hurts? You know, then you want to bring this booklet back, because what I did in the booklet is I did all these pictures, and see these pictures with X's in the muscle, and then these red zones, these red areas. And these are the areas where this muscle can give pain to. So the red areas are the pain areas, and then the X's in the muscle are actually muscle places where if you squeeze the muscle and you just squeeze the blood out of it, you know, you don't just squeeze it really hard. You squeeze it gently and slowly, but go deeper and deeper slowly and make it hard. And then the muscle squeezes out. You actually release a lot of these pains. You can release a lot of these pains in people. So that's why I put these pictures in for every muscle that I found. Just because that's, you know, if you ever want to learn more about massage and stuff, you can. If you want to learn about that, you can always reach out. I'm always happy to talk about that stuff. All right, so the next muscle is on one side of the neck. Push your fingertips deep into the flesh above the clavicle and rub sideways. And if it's tight there, is it tight there? When you do that, is it painful? Do you feel a little electricity if you really go deep? If you do that, you actually rub over some of the nerves that carry the messages from the brain into the arm. And a muscle there that goes around, that you move around, actually squeezes sometimes those nerves and can give you carpal tunnel syndrome, or give you arm pain or shoulder pain. What is the muscle called that reaches from the transverse process, that was side of the neck, to the cervical vertebra, to the rib, the upper ribs? Anybody? Hello.
Feelings?
That was a hard one.
That's a hard one, huh?
It's
Oh, it's not
longest
that nobody's back online. Everybody's still here, I hope.
Yeah.
It's the hard. It's the scalenes. Good. I'm challenging you guys. Oh. This is important muscle. See, this muscle here is the scalene. So if this muscle is tight, because let's say you had an injury that you fall. I know the easiest way to me to explain it is pathology. You have an injury, you fall on your outstretched arm, and you jerk that arm backwards because, you know, you're yanking on it or whatever. You have a kit that you carry around when it's still 5 years old and it's too heavy or something like that. If the arm yanks on the shoulder blade, and that yanks on the rib cage. And when that yanks on the rib cage, it yanks it outward, and that yanks on those muscles that are called the scalenes that attach to the neck. So what that does, what that means, it elongates that muscle a little bit. And so that muscle reactively tightens up and wants to protect everything. And so when it tightens up, it squeezes this nerve going from the neck to the arm and connecting the brain to the arm. And sometimes what that does, it gives us tingly feelings into the extremity somewhere. And the other thing that does, it gives you neck pain. It can get you pain up in here where it attaches. And so that's the scalene. All right, do you understand that a little bit better?
Yeah.
Actually, I was kind of like, if the if that one, and then the one we just discussed, like, where is that in comparison to the other one? Because
Yeah, let me show you. Good. I'm glad you have it. So
okay,
the SCM is here from the back of the skull down to the front
okay,
of the, like this one. If you go right in the middle here, you know, and you push on the bone down and you go right to the side, that's when you hit the sternocleidomastoid.
okay,
And then you can follow that, like you can like choke yourself and follow it up to the skull. The other one is more lateral, so it's more to the side. So it's like the first one was like here, and the other one is more deep. So that's why I want to palpate it and touch it from right above the clavicle out, further out. So the first is like here, and the second one is further out when you palpate.
okay, cool. Because yeah, when you brought up that picture, I was like, wait, they're
No,
super close.
No, it's
Okay,
very,
cool.
you know, most of us are kinesthetic. So, you know, these names, they get very fast that we zone out. And so it's very important, I feel, to keep it, you know, kinesthetic and talking about it and thinking about it and like that.
Cool. Thanks, Professor.
Yeah, keep those questions coming like that. The next muscle is deep in the front of the neck. It gets often injured during a car accident when one's head doesn't touch the headrest, making it through the space. So this is important because this is what I learned when I did car accident seminars. If a car hits from behind and forces push forward, the head is not. If your head is not touching the headrest when you drive, the head will have to move from the space to the headrest, and that extends the head extra hard. Does that make sense? If you're holding your head in space and you don't touch your headrest, you don't try to make a double chin when you drive, and you get slammed from the back, your car moves faster than your head, so your head is stuck in space, so it will jerk backwards and hit the headrest. And once that's done, it's going to go forward and hit the front. You know, if it's really bad, it hits the steering wheel. But that backwards movement there's the front muscle. Can you name that muscle?
Longest coli.
The longest coli.
Very good. Was that very hard to understand?
No.
Good, because that is something I didn't understand until like years into chiropractic. But this is the muscle, so you understand when the head goes back violently, it will tear right in front here. And very often that gives us a lot of pain and a lot of, you know, long-standing problems. I know now you don't want to drive no more, but, you know, too bad. And a lot of problems long-standing, and I'm bringing it up because you can do something about it. You can, you know, I don't know, Kirsty, how many massage people do massage in the front? You know, you just, you know, if you don't go there, nobody going to help you. So that's why.
Super rare.
It's super rare, right?
Yeah.
Maybe on the side, but that's already painful sometimes, so they stop doing that. But it's very important that if you have whiplash, you have somebody look at these things, and that's why I want to talk about it. Plus, I think it's fascinating to understand how many layers of muscles do we have. You know, it's crazy. Just to touch on them. So that's the longest coli. That muscle is not on the list for the test. So once you've understand what I just explained to you now, you can forget that muscle. We have a few more players in the back, right underneath the occiput. There's a group of deep laying muscles help us move the head and the neck. They are also somewhat neurologically wired to eye movements and deeply connect to strong fascia in the back. These features make that muscle group clinically very interesting. Can you name the muscle group?
The suboccipital triangle.
The suboccipital triangle. So when I talk about fascia here, the word fascia, the biggest one that we mostly concern ourselves is the one that goes from the occiput, the back of the head, all the way down. The occiput is right up here. All the way down the back, the butt, the back of the legs, you know, the hamstrings, and then the calf to the sole of the feet. And so that, you know, when you talk about a fascia, what you talk about is when you eat meat, I know some of you guys don't eat meat, but when you eat meat, and you have a piece you can't cut out because it's too thick, and you have to cut it out, but it's not bone, but it's this thick thing you don't want to, it's not going to be able to chew on it. That's the thick fascia. Those are the connections that we have all the way in the back down on the back down to the sole of the feet. And these muscles here, and these muscles in here, they are very, very deep, but they control a lot of what that fascia does. So it's very interesting. And they also control eye movements. And when you lay in bed, and well, you shouldn't, but I do it anyway. If you watch TV in bed and you have your eyes open, there's more contraction here. And if I close my eyes, and I just have it audio TV, I guess, then these relax. Try that out at some point. And so that tells you what the suboccipital triangle is doing. So it's a very interesting group of muscles. Does that make some sense?
Yes.
Good.
Yeah.
I heard somebody in the background. I know if I speak too long, it's like everybody goes to sleep. We're almost done. Overlaying those muscles, and underneath the trapezius are a set of posterior back muscles. One runs straight up and down, lying medial. The other fibers orient more diagonally from the midline to the mastoid process of the temporal bone. Can you name those two?
Splenius capitis and semi-spinalis.
There you go. God, I am asking some deep questions here. I'm sorry. But yeah, so that is well, right here, these, and then the other ones. So the ones are like from the outside kind of inward, and the other ones they're a little bit from the inward lateral. Just again, you're looking at these layers. It's kind of crazy. You've got the deep, deep, deep layer here, the suboccipital triangle, and you've got overlying the semispinalis and splenius, and then overlying that we have the trapezius. That wherever that was in here, that overlies the whole thing. So you can also understand if you want to move then head down, the whole head down, for example, it's much easier to do that with the trapezius than doing that with a suboccipital triangle muscle. Which is more like to be a stabilizer for the small bones in the neck, for example. Here, does that make sense a little bit?
Is the suboccipital triangle like deeper or more towards the surface than the?
Deep. Yes.
Okay, so the splenius is more towards the surface.
So yes, you have this layer the deepest, and then you got the splenius and the semispinalis because they're bigger muscles. They overlay the deep muscles.
Oh, okay.
And then the trapezius is on top of that. And so the most superficial muscles, the trapezius in this case, is the one that does the biggest motions. Like that's the one that brings the head all the way down to the side. The other muscles are more helpers, or they move the smaller muscles in between. Bones. Like this muscle, this one here, it only moves C2 and the occiput. It's very small. All right? I know. You got to understand these muscles, man. They carry us around all day long. With that, let's leave the neck. As we check out the backstroke trunk muscles, we find a more superficial group generally reaching from the pelvis area upward. Some muscle fibers stay medially, reaching up vertically, while others reach more laterally onto the ribs. These superficial muscles are concerned with larger movements, such as side bending or trunk rotations. Can you name that group? Anybody?
I don't know. I had a harder time with this one.
Erector spinae.
I don't know.
There you go. I heard it.
Erector spinae muscles.
Erector spinae muscles. So what I'm trying to get to is this muscle group that if you feel like your muscles is like contracting or spasming and you reach on your hip around your crest, you reach around this area here and you reach up a little bit and it's really tighty. That's the most superficial back muscles. And collectively, they are called erector spinae. So we got some that are right on the spine, a little bit further out, and then much further out. So that's why when the people, they subdivide the erector spinae, they call one Spinalis, which here I say is from spinous process to spinous process. SP is the spinous process. And then one is longissimus, they call that. That goes from the pelvis up to the transverse process. Longissimus means long to me. That's just that one in the middle is the longest. And then the iliocostalis means it goes from the ilium. We learn about the ilium now, right? That's the iliac crest up here. Goes from the ilium to the costalis. That's the rib. So that's the most outside one. So your pelvis to the ribs. And so but for us, we don't need to worry about the details here, but I put them up. We are okay with it calling it Erector Spinae. Because nobody, except for further anatomy, nobody's going to worry about which detail one you're going to talk about. We're just the whole superficial back muscles. Okay?
Got it.
I got it. Good. If not, speak up. Follow. All right. Deeper to that massive layer are many deep muscles that attach right onto the different parts of the vertebra. Some span from the outside of the vertebra, the transverse process, below and reach diagonally upwards towards the spinous process of vertebra a few segments above. The function of these deep muscles is crucial for low back stability and protection. It is one of the main ones to activate and strengthen with any low back ailment weakness. What is that muscle called?
The multifidus.
Which one?
The multifidus.
Multifidus.
Oh.
Multifidus is correct too, though. Multi means many and fidus means muscle belly. So when I look at that muscle, it's right here. It's right in here. It has many muscle bellies that go very deep from the outside of the vertebra, which is the transverse process, to the inside, which is the spinous process. And it contracts that and it moves segmentally. They call that. And when you compare that with this muscle, these big muscles, they move the whole back to the side or to the back. These small muscles, they control what goes on between each segment. And that's one reason why when that muscle is weak, the low back is not strong. Because then you put pressure on each segment, and that is not protective of these discs and these joints here. And that creates back pain. So that's why that muscle, the multifidus muscle, is also very important in low back issues. And what you can see here is a study that I have from when I did the seminars about this whole stuff. And these are that multifidus muscle, nice and thick. And you see how dark it is? And then you look down here and how white it is. White means it's fatty and not muscle tissue. So that means it's weak. That means it's strong. And so that means this is not protecting the back at all. All right. And so if that shows up in an MRI, then you know you got to do exercises that make that multifidus stronger. And that's why I put these exercises in there. Basically, you do extension exercises. So in case, you have back pain, you know what to do about it. So that's very, very effective. Even though it seems like a little bit lame. But it's very effective. All right. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Yes.
No, less answers. I'm sorry. I'm putting you to sleep. Believe me. I'm okay. 8 minutes and we're out. Okay. 7:30. Looking at the chest in front guides us to the muscle line between the ribs. There are two layers, an outside and inside one, which of the two help raise the rib cage up, and by doing that increases the lung volume.
The diaphragm.
External intercostal.
Which one?
External
External intercostal. So the diaphragm brings the lung downward.
Mm-hmm.
So that's attached to the bottom of all the ribs. Let's go to that. The diaphragm, because I heard that. So the diaphragm is right here. So that's attached to all the ribs and then the back of the spine. So that moves the whole, when that contracts, the whole lungs moves downward. So that straightens out, and then the lung volume gets much bigger. The one that I was describing are in between each rib. So in between each
The
rib, you have
external.
one set that goes to the rib below, the rib above, towards the outside a little bit. And when that contracts, you can sort of see how that rib above lifts the rib below up. See that?
Yeah.
And when that happens, the lungs expand. And when the lungs expand, well, the rib cage expands, and the lungs are attached to the rib cage, and so therefore the lungs also expand. And on the other side here, we got those internal intercostals. They lay deeper to this layer here. They just are removed on this side, the external intercostals, and they pull the upper ribs down. So all the ones below pull the upper ribs down, and that compresses the rib cage, and that helps in external breathing. So when we exhale very, very strongly, we contract those because it helps contract the rib cage. All right? You got it? Good. And then talking about breathing, I cannot stop to be amazed by the next muscle. That's the rib cage, referred to as a parachute-shaped muscle. When it contracts, the shoulders just moves inferior. By doing that, the lung volume increases, and since the lungs attached to the rib cage and this muscle, we then inhale. What's that muscle called?
This one's the diaphragm.
That's the diaphragm. Perfect. And we just talked about that before. That's this muscle. So, huh? Oh, that was that for us? No. Speak up. Hey, I heard some noise in the background. But the thing I want to emphasize about the diaphragm is the fact that in us it's the belly breathing. So we're always sort of taught to, hold the stomach in and and then we're left with chest breathing. It is very important to stomach breathing and belly breathing, because when I think about, look at all this volume right here, and when that whole diaphragm comes down, how much bigger this lung volume is going to be. That's a lot of inhalation. That's a lot of air coming in, providing our body with oxygen. Now, the other breathing, the chest breathing, is right here. Just the chest goes up a little bit. In comparison, that expansion, that's not that much increase in volume. So we want to emphasize the belly breathing, and one way you can do that is if you're laying down, you put your book, when you're done studying, you put your book on your belly, and you just see it go up and down a few inches. When you inhale and exhale, and you learn how to do the stomach breathing that way. All right? So you got to do that for me at some point. That make sense?
Yes.
Please,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yes.
And lastly, when talking about the axial, we discussed the front and sides of the stomach, the gut muscles. They lay behind the muffin tops and help move our trunks, compress the abdominal contact. Most importantly, when strong, gives us a solid foundation from which the arms and legs can move from. That's the core strength. So that's, you remember, it makes sense why we have a core strength. You heard of core strength before?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
So what we want, the core being strong, means we have a solid trunk, and that means the arms and leg can move around without everything being wobbly. And when that happens, you have much less movement in all the joints and all the elements, and so you have much less injury because of that. That's why everybody emphasizes the core strength. All the muscles that wrap around the gut have some attachment, the lumbodorsal fascia, that's in the back. In the front, they attach to a tough fibrous tissue that reaches vertically from the pubic symphysis to the xiphoid process. What is it called?
Linea alba.
Linea alba. Yeah. Well, here we go. That up and down thing is the linea alba. There we go. Up and down. All right. Good. On the sides of the abdomen, we have two layers of diagonal muscle. Their fibers directed are about 90 degrees in angles to one another. This is great because as it comes to trunk movement, they support one another greatly. Oh, that's not that great of English. This orientation also makes them very stabilizing. What two muscles am I describing?
I had trouble with that one.
Is that the internal and external abdominal?
Correct. It's the internal and external abdominal obliques. So what I'm trying to describe, they're up here. What I'm trying to describe are, I like this picture because it's got all the attachments. It's actually really accurate. So one goes this way, from the ribs downward to the linea alba, kind of. and the other one goes from the inside outward. And so when we're gonna work on the model, this one you can, you know, when you hold your fingers according to how the muscle fibers orient, it's like you put your hands in your pocket, like this way, downward.
Mm-hmm.
And the other one is on the inside, and that goes the opposite in the fibers. And that crisscross direction makes it really, really strong, because you kind of have like this in front of the, you know, compressing the stomach, like a crisscross pattern. And so that's what I try to describe there. Does that make a little more sense?
Yeah.
All right.
Yep.
And then the next muscle is my favorite. No, that can't be what I was thinking about. And by the way, thinking evolutionarily, and of us as a whole organism, muscle cells are in some ways individual animals and deserve to be treated as well. I always bring that up because I find people that come in and say like, oh, my back hurts so bad, I hurt it. They have a much better outcome when I treat them than the ones who come in and say like, I hate my back, man, it's failed me. And I'm like, yeah, it's been holding you up for 40 years. What are you going to say? So anyway, that's when I say, you know, I don't care about you, I care about your muscle. And then sometimes they have to walk out because they can't take it. But anyway, one of the most important core muscles is the one that wraps horizontally around the gut. It is the deepest layer and needing of attention in most of us who sit more than, you know, more than occasionally. What's that muscle called?
The
Transverse.
transverse abdominus.
Very good. Transverse abdominus. I think of, you know, when you think it's this one wrapping around, it's on the deepest layer. It's not the rectus, it's not the obliques, it's deeper than that. It's right around the gut. And when you think of core strength, you want the gut. The gut is watery substance. The chest is a lot of air. So you want the core really come out of the gut. So the gut, compressing the gut really helps the core. And so this muscle becomes crucially important to make the core be very strong. And so that's why they call that be one of the main core muscles, that core strength. See down here? And this exercise, man, is one of the best. If you actually walk, if you go on your hands and you walk the ball up and down a little bit a few times, it's really, really tough for this to stay straight. So that's a very good exercise. But make sure you're strong in the back before you do it. Don't, you know, if you have issues, don't do it because I said it's a great exercise.
I'm going to call you that I broke my back.
Yeah, right, exactly. Make sure you use caution on your own. I mean, you can call me and I, you know, but anyway. I know, got to talk about that. And lastly, look at that. What's the six-pack muscle called?
The rectus abdominis.
That's the rectus abdominis. That's the one everybody wants to show off. But it's really So what's interesting about that is, again, it's the fact that, so the first part goes from the pubic symphysis to the belly button, and then we got a few more sections going all the way up to the rib cage. And what's interesting is the fact that these inscriptions here, the tendons going across, they make all these sections individual muscles. So when you contract, the whole muscles, you actually contract this muscle, this muscle, this muscle, and this muscle individually, and that makes the whole thing very strong. And so when you do sit-ups, right, some of us do sit-ups to strengthen this muscle. The challenge with sit-ups is the fact that we anchor our legs on the floor and bend our knees and then bring our trunk up, which is great because we can contract this muscle. But we have a deep, deep, deep muscle that we're going to talk about that goes, let me see it, it goes all the way from the front of the spine downward to the inside of the thigh and raises the thigh up. It's called the psoas muscle, if you ever heard of it. And it gives us a sore ass. So the problem is when that muscle is hyperactive, it gives us pain in the back. Like the sore ass, right? Yeah, and so if you do sit-ups really strong all the way up, you know, you touch with your nose, you touch the knees or some whatever shit, then, you activate the psoas more than the rectus abdominis and you cause yourself more back pain. And so that's why the military sort of sit-ups are not really that great. The ones that are great are sort of the baby sit-ups where you go up a little bit until you feel these contracting and then you hang there for a moment and then you go back down. Because then
that's actually worse.
Huh?
That's actually, you can actually feel it more.
Yeah, because you don't engage the psoas that starts around in here downward. You leave that muscle out, and so therefore you don't activate that too much, but you really build the stomach muscle. And what's interesting, what I learned is that if you engage the top ones, all of them engage. They're sort of neurologically connected. So that's what I've also learned, although who knows if that's all accurate. But anyway, that's the rectus abdominis. So with that, I got 4 minutes over. So any questions?
No, I think so.
Mm-mm.
Okay, well, I feel very grateful that you didn't fall asleep on me.
Thank you for helping us figure out Zoom and stuff and like sending all that.
Yeah,
Well,
I feel
good.
like it worked
Good
pretty
idea.
good.
It seemed to
Yeah.
work all right?
Yep.
Yeah, the in-class part, like when we do in-class lectures, it always helps me like understand our books more. So it was like really helpful to be able to have this.
So even on Zoom, it's somewhat helpful.
Yeah.
Once we all muted ourselves, it went great.
Agreed.
I know, right? That's the thing. We have to learn a little bit about it. And this is